get started here. My name's Brian Rose. I'm the city planner for the city of Gallatin. We're excited about this project. It's a great opportunity for the city. Basically, what we're here tonight to talk about is the CDBG grant funding. So CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. That's administered by HUD, Housing and Urban Development from the federal government. And what we have is basically an entitlement to a little bit over $300,000 to be able to work with low to moderate income areas within the city. And we're here to gather your input as we go through the process of developing our plan to submit to HUD to be able to go through the approval process that they require. But we definitely need your input on that as part of the requirements that we do public input sessions for this process. And so we're here to talk about that. Jim Carpenter, he's the planner that's going to be our main contact on this project. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. He's got a presentation to go through, and then we'll have a microphone that we can pass around to anybody who wants to give some input on that. So take it away, Jim.
All right. Well, thank y'all. My name is Jim Carpenter. And let's get into this. So what is... There we go. Community Development Block Grant. So this funding source has been around since 1974. So it is kind of a collaboration or a consolidation, really, of different types of funding. So all of these funding opportunities were around in the 50s and 60s and late 40s. And so it is kind of all rolled into this one program called Community Development Block Grant. And the options and the opportunities with this funding are pretty wide. So the primary objective is development of viable urban communities, primarily for low to moderate income persons through decent housing, suitable living environment, and expanded economic opportunity. So what does that mean? So HUD funds this through entitlement communities. So there's kind of two streams of funding for the Community Development Block Grant. So there are direct allocations to states. So the state of Tennessee has a direct allocation, Alabama, wherever, has a direct allocation that they can fund communities through individual grant projects. So I believe that there have been water projects, sewer projects, sidewalk projects in Sumner County over the years that have been funded this way. And that is just an individual application, kind of case-by-case basis. The other funding stream is through what are known as entitlement communities. And all that means is that there is a direct allocation from U.S. HUD to those communities directly. There's no application. It's not, optional. It is directly funded through the federal budget every year. And so in December, the city signed a letter of intent to go through this process to become an entitlement community. Previously, Hendersonville had been an entitlement community for some time, but they gave that up, I want to say, in 2022. And so we've had an opportunity to kind of move into this role. So from that, we can kind of go through different options. So we can do fund it directly to beneficiaries or through subrecipients or community-based development organizations, which are the CBDOs. So if you saw the ad for this public hearing, it covers three things. So a citizen participation plan, the consolidated plan, and the annual action plan. So the consolidated plan is the 5-year overall overarching vision for how the city intends to spend the money. So there is kind of the lead agency description, that'll be us, and then housing and homeless needs assessment, housing market analysis, that 5-year strategic plan, and then rolled into it is the first year annual action plan. So when we have this ready for review, it will be 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan with that 2025, 2026 annual action plan kind of baked into the same document. Citizen participation is required. This is public hearing number 1. HUD requires 2 public hearings at different phases of the process. So this is the first one. We have to submit the plan to HUD 45 days prior to the start of the program year, and then we're allowed to amend it. And then we do another plan at the end of the year called the CAPER. And that is kind of, did you do the things that you said that you would do in your annual action plan and consolidated plan? So national objectives, there are 3 main national objectives for block grant. So it's a direct benefit to low moderate income persons, prevent or eliminate slums and or blight, or meet an urgent need. So we'll start here. So national objectives, low mod income, slum blight, urgent need. So there is, like I said previously, an incredible range of things that can be done. So we can do housing development. So we can't directly build houses with this, and our allotment amount wouldn't go very far to do that. But previously, other communities in the state have done down payment assistance, first-time homebuyer education, which is a requirement for FHA loans. Those sort of things have been done with this money. So that's one option. We also can do rehabilitation of different homes in low moderate income areas or for low moderate income persons. In my previous role in a different community, we did a roof rehabilitation program. So that's a pretty common use of the money as well. Economic development, so we can do job creation for low to moderate income persons. There's a lot of requirements around that, reporting requirements, but that is a thing that can be done. Public facilities, so that means water, sewer, sidewalk infrastructure, all of those things can be done with this. Also, community centers, parks, those sort of things can be funded through this mechanism as well. Public services, that is an important category for a lot of folks in this room. So that is a homeless shelter or Meals on Wheels in a lot of places kind of funded through a similar mechanism to this. I've seen daycares get funded through this. There's a lot of, that's a very broad kind of service mode. The cap on that is 15% of your allocation. So when we get into the numbers a little bit, we'll talk about kind of what that means. So CBDO, again, that is community-based development organizations. So similar to public service, but also more crossover, usually in the housing realm or supportive services realm. And then there is allocations for planning and administration of this grant as well. There you can do, what's the word? Code enforcement can be done through this as well. So what can it not do? Important question. The main thing that we can't do is build government buildings, or political activities. So those are the two main things. The other important thing that we have to note for public service is we cannot use the funding for operation and maintenance expenses. It is an unfortunate reality among many grant programs that I can help you build something, but I can't help you staff it. So that is one of the main limitations with this funding. There are some exceptions for some economic development that allows for different things, but for the most part, 95% of this program is kind of expressly prohibited that way. So, kind of break down some of these things. So low mod, so let's go back. So we have area benefit, limited clientele, housing, and jobs through the low mod area. And then slum blight is based on area basis or spot basis. Urban renewal is a thing because that is the history of this funding. But reality, that's not how 95% of communities are using their funding in 2025. And then urgent needs. So area benefit, so those are activities that benefit all residents of an area, with the idea that a majority of those folks are low to moderate income folks. Some entitlement grantees are exception communities, so this was Hendersonville, where they did not have a census tract that met the low mod qualifications, so they had to do something a little different. So it's primary residential, and then you have to determine your service area. So like I said, water, sewer, park infrastructure, community centers, sidewalk infrastructure can be part of that as well. Limited clientele is the other funding source through that. And that is often job-based or something like that. Senior services can kind of fall into that category as well. Hendersonville last used the money to do some work to their senior center. So that's kind of the mechanism that they use to fund that. Housing, so there's kind of a breakdown of what that means. So this is rehab, rental acquisition, which is very, very, very hard to do under this program at this point, rehab, and home buyer assistance. So this map is a combination of the three census tracts, 02, 0700, 0800, and 902, that make up our 50% low mod income population. There are a few areas of those tracts, most notably on the north side and kind of here east of Nichols and south of Coles Ferry that are outside of city limits. But for the purposes of this, this is kind of our low mod income tracts area. So here's a breakdown of slum blight and then spot. So we can use this to tear down if there was a need to tear down houses. I've been here for 3.5 years. Most of what I've seen is kind of a case-by-case, a one-by-one sort of need for teardowns or condemnations. A lot of cars running into buildings, but not wide swaths of area that need that sort of service. And then urgent need. So tornado, flood, something crazy like that. We can reprogram the money to help with the aid efforts on that front. But the big one here is recipient cannot finance on its own and other funding sources not available. So those are kind of the two big, or not barriers, but thresholds that would have to be used to repair kind of significant damage from a natural event. So obviously this is federal money, so we have to play by all the other federal rules. So Davis-Bacon is the big one in terms of contracting, in terms of bid notices, relocation, acquisition, and one-for-one replacement. So we're not doing a lot of, I don't foresee us doing a lot of rental work with this. That's what that more targets. But this and the home grant is another grant that's similar, kind of crossover in that requirement. And then the big one probably for what we're going to end up doing is that we have to do environmental review, which takes some time. So this is kind of where we're starting with this process and why we need you as the public to provide feedback on what we're doing. So kind of in our internal conversations, one of the main things that's come up is we have to start off, we want to kind of give a highest and best use for this funding. So it is estimated right now. We don't have a final amount of what that means, but because it's allocated with each federal budget cycle, right now our estimate is $309,000 a year. That's not a tremendous amount of money to do projects, really. And so we're kind of looking at what can we do to provide maybe leverage or to most effectively utilize that money to provide the most good for the most people that we can. So the city has two big infrastructure projects currently going on. One on the north side on Bly Avenue, a large infrastructure sidewalk project through Bly and Dorothy Jordan. And then I believe the city is in the process of looking at doing something similar on South Water. And so we're looking at opportunities that we have to further kind of provide services that would not otherwise be provided. And so my kind of individual thought process on this is to work through sidewalk projects around some of the elementary schools that are in this area. So looking at Guild, potentially running sidewalks. So there's sidewalk on South Water, and then there's sidewalk kind of to the property line here along Hawkins. So continuing that through Hawkins to Spencer, and then Jocelyn to Duncan to connect that area, provide that accessibility, walkability there. A second option would be along Hart Street and Malone Drive to connect to Hartsville Pike for Venus Stewart. Potentially with that, we would love to see a partnership with the County Board of Education to extend sidewalk along their property, along Hart as well, to kind of connect that whole block if we were to pursue that option. And then to kind of dovetail with another project, there's sidewalk along Bly, and then there's some sidewalk here along Small Street, but there's really nothing once you get to Magnolia. So looking at the opportunity to connect Union Elementary School with that existing sidewalk network on Bly and Small. Yeah.
So with that, like just seeing like how the population is today, the temperament of society, most kids either ride the bus to school or they are car riders. So could we possibly look at maybe allocating this money to a nonprofit to address and work with the homeless population?
So that
Because,
was
like when I worked for the Salvation Army, I worked for
Sure.
the program I worked for was the LifeNav program, and the funding that we received, we were able to help people that were unhoused. Well, first and foremost, we went out and did daily meal services to engage that clientele of people. And then when they needed our services and they would come in and agree to work with us, if they didn't have identifying documents like social security cards, birth certificates, IDs, those types of things, we would help. Help them get those, and we would buy those for them, and then we would keep them in our offices for safekeeping. And then we also worked with getting them stationed, and we had an agreement with the hotel, so we would pull them out of the encampments. We would like start teaching them like basic life skills and putting them in housing to get used to it until we could work with HUD and help them get like HUD VASH vouchers if they were veterans, and Section 8 vouchers to get them permanently housed. But I think that would be a better way to spend the money rather than, I mean, I love the sidewalk ideas, but I mean, I don't think it's really benefiting the children because most kids don't walk to school.
Sure. So on that front, like I said, that funding is allowed, but it's at that 15% cap. So that would be $45,000 a year, and really, it's a one-shot funding. So, like for example, if you had a shelter, I could one-shot that money to go from 5 beds to 10 beds, and help you do that addition in terms of building. But I couldn't do any operational, any maintenance, any terms of kind of continual funding. So it's like, what can I accomplish in one grant year? So I'll go into where the program year is at the end. But basically the way that the funding mechanism works is that the entire grant amount all the work has to be completed in one grant year. So if there is a thing that I can do with that cap, knowing that we have that 15% public service cap, and kind of what that looks like, I think we would absolutely be remiss to not look at that. But I think it's important to also understand kind of the limitations of what can be done because of all the other rules that go with the program.
I mean, even with that, we can still set up an agreement with the hotel so that we can pull people out of encampments here in Gallatin, pull them out of their cars, and we can still use that funding to pay for families to have a hotel room for a year. And then with that, you know, they continue working with agencies, or we see if we can like even pull the Salvation Army and see if they can extend their coverage here and work with that program so that they can still get identifying documents and be taught those skills, and then, you know, partnering with other nonprofits here possibly to teach them the ropes so that they can still go out and work on the housing piece, because housing is something that everybody deserves no matter what.
Sure, completely agreed. And like I said, I have no problem going to HUD and kind of running that up, the flagpole, in terms of what is actually feasible. That'll probably be a much longer conversation than what we have in the hour tonight.
And then I think too, with that opens Gallatin up as a smaller city to do something major that cities our size are not thinking of doing, not trying to do. And I mean, that could open up for a whole lot greater funding on the level that Nashville is doing.
Sure. Yeah. No,
because homelessness is a major problem in Sumner County that most people aren't addressing, or most people probably don't know of. But I mean, we have upwards of 400 families in Sumner County schools where students sleep outside in the elements or in cars every night.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and it's something that I would love to address.
And we do have a great team that's already started that work,
yes,
and has been doing it for over a decade.
Yes, and would love to partner and do what we can,
so we can
to
get some more
go in that way.
Streamline to them. They're already doing the work. They know where to go. They know who to engage with, and ultimately, it wouldn't really cost the city much more than having the funding streamlined and then pointing them in the right direction to work with other nonprofits that are
sure.
doing housing stuff.
So one of the other things I'll say on this is that, like I said, it's a one-shot. So I can provide the funding for 1 year, but it wouldn't be able to go to the same nonprofit for the same services for the next year. So.
Okay. Question about the sidewalks. So you're pointing out a couple of areas. The first one that you pointed out, I think it was was it Jocelyn? Well, anyway.
well,
So, yeah, okay. So basically, my question is, putting in a sidewalk there, those are narrow roads, a lot of ditches. Will it require taking condemnation, eminent domain, working out, getting easements from these property owners to widen these roads, put in sidewalks? That sounds like a big project.
Sure. So that's a fair question to ask. I am not an engineer, but it appears to us on preliminary side that there is enough right-of-way to provide curb and gutter instead of open ditches, and then sidewalks on top of that within the existing right-of-way. Again, that will fully have to be designed and determined by engineers, but in kind of our preliminary look into this, it looks like there's enough existing right-of-way that there shouldn't be much in the way of needing additional easements or additional property. But like I said, I'm not a PE. I do not have a license in engineering. So we may get into the weeds a little bit on this and find that, but what it looks like is that we have enough right-of-way to do something, at least on one side of the street, to provide those services and a little bit more safety for folks trying to get to and from school, and also to and throughout the neighborhoods as well. Because we know people walk in these neighborhoods anyways, and we would love to be able to provide as safe of facilities for them as possible.
I'm gonna go back with with Councilman Carter. Tired. Yeah, a couple of questions. So when you say 15% max, that's not a lot of money, but it's still a lot of money for a nonprofit. The disbursement of the money, do you have to do to one entity only, or you can do it to several entities?
Sure, that's a good question. So let's see if I have. So we would have to open that up. So there would be an application process, and it would go through kind of similar to what the city does through some of their other grant processes to support local nonprofits. So it would go kind of through a mirrored process of that. But yes, that could be, $45,000 to one work. It could be 22.5 to 2, kind of whatever kind of the situation or the need called for in that particular year. It doesn't have to go to just one, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to meet the further we split up that pie, the harder it gets to meet the paperwork and reporting requirements that the funding requires.
So the main need, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically shelter. That's, having a good shelter place.
Kind of goes back to what Josh
Yeah.
said. It's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because they can't do anything without ID.
Yeah.
They can't do anything without a birth certificate. They can't do anything without anything.
Yeah, in
So
order to
you have to be well-rounded.
Permanently housed with our programs, like you have to have those, you have to have an ID, you have to
Mhm.
have birth certificates for everybody, you have to have birth certificates, ID, social security cards for you and everybody else in the home.
I've actually been doing that for the last 2 years with a program up under the Stay Warm Shelter, which is called First Two. So, like you said, those are the first two things anybody would need to get started. But we've been doing that for the last 2 years, but quietly, because it's, our funds that we're using. Well, my funds that I'm using, so I'm just saying, but that's right. You got to have those two things, to get anywhere, so.
And then too, like I said, with us, it was great that we had that agreement that while we were working with them to get them permanent housing that they would live in forever, hopefully, we could still house them in that hotel to get them used to being in the elements. Because when you take people that have lived outside or lived in a car for 10, 20, 30 years, there's going to be wraparound services needed. 9 times out of 10, there's some dependency issue that they're going to need some treatment for. There's also going to be a very high correlation of those people having mental issues, and most of the time very much severe mental issues. And then too, that population is not going to interact with daily normal people like how we can all come in and be cordial with each other. It's going to take somebody that has built rapport with them, that has worked with them, that knows where to meet them at. Like me now, I don't know the population here in Sumner County, so they absolutely will not interact with me. And then too, with that, it can also open it up for our police team to maybe create some small teams on our shift so that they can go out and dress it. Because we had what we called, oh geez, well, I forget the name of the team with Metro, but we had the same group of cops, and maybe it was upwards of 6 or 8, but those same 6 or 8 are the ones that always went out to meal services with us, and everybody respected him. So like I remember one time we had a guy that was accused of murder in another state, and they found out about that. They allowed him to eat at meal service. They would absolutely not make arrests during our meal services so that they weren't causing confusion, but they would pull the people to the side. They pulled them to the side and they were like, hey, we find out that you are on the run in another state. We do need to make this arrest. We're not going to make it while the team is here feeding. Go ahead and secure your belongings, get them to somewhere, somebody safe that can keep those for you, and then we'll come back in an hour when meal service is over. And they took that guy in peacefully. He cleared up everything. They brought him back, and he was able to still have his belongings. And that's another important thing, because a lot of people, they may only have one bag with their whole life in it, and which is why in Nashville you may hear a lot of people will not go into shelters that are safe places supposedly that are not hosted by the Salvation Army, because these people make them leave their whole life outside in the elements. And who's going to leave their whole life just so that they can go inside and have one night of warmth when they've already braved the cold and they've braved storms or they've braved severe heat?
Yeah, that and pets. Those are kind of the two things that
And pets as well, yes.
are big barriers for.
Can't blame them. Like, who's
Yeah.
gonna leave the only thing that they know that loves them if it's their pet?
Yep. No, 100%.
Excuse me, you mentioned that of the $309,000 that are available each year, $45,000 is only allotted to nonprofits?
So we are going to go through the process of allotting, and that's kind of this first public hearing is for us to get an idea of where the community's priorities are, what the community's needs are, and for us to kind of build a program around that to reflect what the community wants to fund with this. And then from there, that's kind of what we're looking at. The 15% is the max that can be allocated for public service. There's a 20% max for admin. We're not planning on allocating that at this point, and there may be a time where we need to keep somebody employed that may otherwise not be able to be employed. But otherwise, we're not looking. So the 20% admin cap is hard cap. The 15% public service cap is hard cap. Those are really the only kind of real sort of limits in terms of how much the money can be allocated to a specific line item in a particular program year or consolidated plan.
Real quick, to go back on the discussion about rehabilitation of housing. Out in the community, there's a number of places that are either falling into disrepair, close to being eligible to be brought brought forth as dangerous buildings where citizens don't have the money themselves to make the repairs. You know, sometimes a simple repair can knock out a long-term issue. Where or when can we make it available for citizens to apply and go through a process to be determined for additional funding to help with, like you said, roof repairs?
Sure. So that's absolutely an option that we have. Would have no problem doing that. If that's kind of where the community, city council, mayor wants to go in that direction, I have no problem going in that direction. And let me see if I have a little bit on here on that. So that's definitely something that we can do. The biggest thing in terms of rehab of buildings is this. So obviously if you're touching a roof, you don't have to do kind of wet paint sort of things, but the further you get into a house, the more kind of regulations kind of are built around those programs. And so that's just something to keep in mind in terms of relating the cost to what we have in terms of resources to provide those services. But it's definitely something that we can look at for sure.
Durf, that was a good point too. I like that point as well, but I do think that we need to have very strict guidelines on that, because I'm definitely for, you know, if there's a single parent or there's a family that's working really hard but just cannot afford to fix their home and to bring it back into regular or code standards. But I wouldn't want it to be a situation where you have maybe someone passed away and they left the home to several children, and the children are just bickering back and forth and choosing not to make the repairs just because they don't want the other person to benefit, and then the city brings that house to code and then they rent it out and are using it as a profit for themselves.
Yeah. Like I said, in a past life, I've done that work, and we had a lot of those kind of standards built in. It's not something I'm unfamiliar with. So, if that's the direction that we want to go, that's something that we can do. But would want to hear that feedback on the community side to get a push in that direction.
And definitely we can push that cap up for the community part to help the homeless and address that issue and that concern. I'm all for that as well.
So will there be a committee meeting?
Can't hear it on the
Sorry,
recording.
I got big mouth though.
Oh,
So after the second public meeting, will there be closed committee meetings or open committee meetings?
so kind of the process is, so this is our kind of first meeting. I'm in the process of writing the plan now. The next step will be that the plan goes to a 30-day period of public comment. So let's see if we can get there. So go back a little bit. So also, like I said, as part of this public hearing, we're reviewing the citizen participation plan. So that is a good question. So these are kind of the core sort of keys of that. These are pretty standard. Many communities use similar standards as this. So this is our 2 public hearings. A minimum of 7 days. We're looking to notify more than that. And then any sort of amendments or consolidated plans, so like that's our big 5-year plan, have to have a little bit more notice than that. So you'll have more than 7 days, but that is the minimum. And then they'll be held at times and locations that are convenient to public or potential or actual beneficiaries. And we have accommodations for, whatever needs to be accommodated within, reason if people contact us. So that's part of that. We also have our beloved emergency deal, which everybody had to add because nobody knew that disease would be a thing that would throw everybody online prior to 5 years ago. So that is also built in. It's not what we intend to use, but it's there if we have to use it. So what our timeline is looking like at this point. So we are in the process of writing a draft plan. Like I said, I will take all feedback from this, and as we're working to kind of put that together, we will have that out for a 30-day public comment period. We're looking at May 19th, which is 2 weeks from yesterday. I have a lot of work to do on that, but that is what we're shooting for in terms of a goal to have that. So the second public hearing, and the way HUD does it is you have to have public hearings in different phases of creating the plan. So this is our public hearing before the comment period. We're going to have another public hearing after the comment period. We're looking at June 24th. And then we are projecting a program year start of August 1st. So for this, it would be a program year of August 1st to July 31st. That may get pushed to September 1st, but that's kind of what our current framework is at this point. But those are the next kind of steps in the process.
Yeah, okay. So it seems a little bit backwards to me because if you're going to put together a draft plan before you actually get input from the public, because right here there's a very small group of public here in this room, and we're just kind of asking questions. We're not really giving a whole lot of suggestions because we're just hearing about the program for the first time. So I think that, like, unless the draft plan, like, you're going to come up with stuff, I guess, from what you heard today, and then after that, are you going to take all the comments from the public and change the plan from those comments?
So that's, at the very least, all comments will be incorporated into the plan. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that 100% of everything gets into anybody's dreams, hopes, wishes, aspirations for these things. But that is kind of the process that HUD has laid out. And so we're just kind of walking that road the best that we can. And then kind of taking a look at what that means. So,
Like you're thinking right now of like your draft plan that you're kind of thinking of putting together in the next couple of weeks, is it going to be those 3 sidewalks, and then, like, is that kind of like set in stone already?
it's so that is not set in stone. We definitely want to have more conversations with stakeholders kind of throughout the process, both inside and outside of that 30-day public comment period, to kind of further enlighten and guide the plan drafting. And it's all kind of fluid at this point, but we have to have something at least for public comment for people to look at, and then going from there.
And I'll also add, this plan, once it's submitted, is something that can be amended over, if we look and see that there's a better need where we could potentially put that funding towards it, we would go through an amendment process and send that to HUD as a request to amend. They have to approve all of our amendment requests. We can't just decide what to change it to and go and do it. But it's something that if the community feels strongly enough about, we can always amend it at some future point in time. Now, also, part of the plan that we're sort of looking at is creating a little bit of a list of things that you can opt to choose from, so that way it gives us a little bit of flexibility in not having to do everything on that list. But as long as we're doing something that's on that approved list, that will be acceptable to HUD as well. So.
Yeah, because one thing I know that I've just heard a lot about from the community that they want, and you mentioned parks could be something like, is soccer. Like the soccer community has been here like in force several times. So like there's stuff that we know the community wants, right? So I think that's a good idea. Like have a list of stuff that we've been hearing over the years. Like this is what the community is like coming out in force saying like we need this, and like have those things so that the people can actually say what they want.
So can you add rental assistance to that? Because we are gonna approve.
So, with, when so there was a COVID specific funding for block grant that did do rental assistance, which was a rather exceptional program. We can look at it, but again, kind of going back to the reporting requirements, they're kind of direct rental assistance is a little bit more cumbersome on the reporting requirements outside of that one kind of period of time.
The only reason I say that is our phone rings off the hook
Oh yeah.
about rental assistance.
Mhm.
Because there's not many people or not many entities in Sumter County that provide.
Particular grant, but something that individually I would like to see moving forward is more collaboration between various stakeholders and awareness of what people are doing in terms of services that are provided, because MCHRA has services that they do. I don't know what they are. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. I don't know kind of what that world is. I know Habitat has services. I know Shalom Zone has services. I don't know the full breadth of what everybody is doing. And so in order to further develop the community, that sort of bringing various stakeholders to the table to get a little bit more alignment and understanding of, you know, these are the resources, this is what we have, and kind of making those connections would be something that I would like to encourage the best that I know how. So whatever that looks like
and
is
the great thing about this whole program is that it's an annual program. So we're not just going to get the 300,000 this year, but we'll have opportunities. If we don't get to one project this year, we can get to it hopefully on an out year. You know, there's opportunity to do a lot of stuff with that funding. So we want to be as flexible as we can with it. Give opportunities throughout the community in different ways, so that we kind of spread the wealth, right? We are kind of getting up to the end of the public hearing. We know we have a city council meeting starting here in just a few minutes. So what we've done is we've given our information for you to be able to reach out to us with, if you want to just, you know, take a snapshot of that or jot that down. We would love to get any sort of written comment that you have. If you have more ideas, talk to your friends and have them submit information, you know, more ideas to us as well. But you know,
Yeah.
we certainly do appreciate all of your input. And you know, I'll just say thank you from the planning department and from the city for being here and for participating. So.
Just so you all are aware, Salvation Army does it as well, but for people that are local, Mid-Cumberland Community Action Agency, they do rental assistance and assistance with your water. They also have programs where they'll help you fix weatherization programs, help weatherize Gallatin, Hughesville area, they can go to the Shalom Zone. Monday through Friday, they have people there and they can get the application, and the application will tell them all the necessary things they'll need. But they do provide rental assistance for people that have past due balances, as well as prospective rent to keep them current and to make sure that they're not losing their homes. And then they can receive that assistance for up to 18 months.
Okay.
Can you do me a quick favor and say your name just for the record?
My name is Chaplain Deborah Austin, and I'm with the Stay Warm Shelter. And I've sit here and I listen to, the different ideas that have come in. And with all of the things that have been listed, we got nice sidewalks here, so there had to be a grant or something to put those sidewalks here. We had, like he said, they have rental assistance. In the 10 years that I have run Stay Warm Shelter, and the 20 years I have worked with the homeless, nobody has helped the homeless here in Sumner County. Nobody. There's been no grants. There's been no help. It's been me and my husband. And I am a retired firefighter. And I don't have any debts. Everything I got is paid off. And if I can use my retirement to take care of the homeless here in this city, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong. I've never held office. I've never been sworn in by the city council or the county commissioner to care for the people in my district. They've taken care of everybody else in their district, but they have failed the homeless in their district. And that's just all I want to say.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your candidacy, and we look forward to